Hi, Robin. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm glad to
Good.
be back.
Yes, me too. Me too. I'm excited for the Friday debrief.
Yes, me too. Excited. We did a lot this week, a lot of great stuff
Yes,
using AI.
absolutely. So, let's start by just kind of rewinding where we left off, right? So, we had taken a look at the students' writing using the ICE-T framework, and we had decided that the students were really ready to move from filling in their thoughts on that graphic organizer to just putting down, well, I guess maybe a better way of saying it is they were writing too much on the graphic organizer and not putting words or phrases to prompt their, memories, but instead they were writing out entire sentences, which of course during a testing situation, which is what we're trying to do, prepare the students too well on the test, that's not going to serve them well, right? They're going to write everything on the graphic organizer and get fatigued and then not do well when it came time to type it. So why don't you take over from there?
Sure. So, in third grade, one of the skills that we really try to hone in on in the beginning of the year is writing long. But as we kind of go through the year, that long plan, like you said, became a really long plan of elaboration in the plan. And then they were running out of stamina when they were going to type. So that was one thing we were seeing when they were going to type the response. One thing we were seeing was they were running out of stamina and they weren't able to have the time to fully finish their response. So we're like, okay, well, what can we do as a third grade teacher to help them be successful? So I kind of took their data like we did in the past, ran it through Magic Schools, the writing pieces, and they were still missing some of that elaboration. They were still working on sentence structures. So as a third grade teacher, I say, what can I do to support them? So I asked AI. So I went into ChatGPT with my Magic Schools data, and that was what we did in episode 1, kind of recapping that. And I said to ChatGPT, what can I do as a third grade teacher? And again, it's all in the prompting, right? I know you did a whole big thing about the prompting, so go visit that one to see how
Yes.
we can prompt and use the prompt to the best of our ability. But just talking about it a little bit, I went into ChatGPT and I said, I'm a third grade teacher. My students are still need support in elaboration and sentence structures, and they're planning too long and writing too short. What can I do to help support them? And they gave me a couple ideas. And again, we're the humans in the loop. So I went through those ideas and I kind of like merged a few of them together. And we came up with a really cool idea, which was plan short, write long, from the AI idea, ChatGPT idea. And we this week had a graduation ceremony. And it was so much fun. Our kids graduated from, we made a big deal about it. The teachers wore graduation caps and our gowns, and we processed in and we said, today, everyone, we are graduating. You guys have been doing such a great job. But we need to take the next step, just like a coach would on a team. We're going to coach you to take the next step. Go ahead, Ms. Nostrom, you chime in.
No, no, it's okay. I just was thinking, like, it really was a graduation was the perfect metaphor for that because quite honestly, when they first started writing, they had no idea what to put on those graphic organizers, and you had taught, so much into that, helping them, state what their idea is and, cite their evidence and, continually elaborating and going into the text and making sure that each part of that graphic organizer they knew so well that we actually tipped the scales too far in one direction, that they had so much information, they were so confident about what they wanted to say in each one of those sections that then the organizer became like gigantic,
Yeah.
right? So
Actually became their writing.
it became their writing,
Yes.
yeah. So they went from nothing on the organizer, literally with nothing to say, to too much, like almost
Right.
an essay written on the organizer. So that was kind of cool to see them go from zero to having so much writing.
Right.
But then the next thing they were ready for as writers was to step back and use that organizing tool like an organizing tool, like a pre-writing activity instead of a draft. So I think that the graduation was the perfect metaphor for that, because when you talk to writers and you say, something I think you're ready for is, well, they were definitely ready for this next step. So I loved that
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
And we read a book and it was Jabari Jumps, and it was kind of like a really cool kind of, if you don't know the book Jabari Jumps, it's about a little boy who was taking a leap of faith off of a diving board. So we kind of went into that, and they were taking a leap of faith and having courage to go from this long extended plan that they were writing so beautifully, but now kind of going to that shorter plan of only specific details, so it frees them up for the time to write and elaborate. So we did a graduation ceremony, which was an idea we kind of got from AI, and I kind of merged it together. But it was really cool to see, and the kids really, really enjoyed it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I love the fact that, we kind of stopped for a minute and said, okay, let's go back and see what we can do to remediate this, because we can see that what the output that they were doing on the graphic organizer wasn't quite what we wanted. And so maybe you could talk into a little bit the suggestion of working backwards, because you got that idea from ChatGPT as well, right?
Did. So, coming into third grade and planning and organizing, we had our plan, and they again were writing too long. So, we went into Magic Schools, we ran the data, we kind of put that data into ChatGPT. It gave us that idea of that plan that we used, but now also it said, let's work backwards. ChatGPT said, have them do the longer plan because it gets them writing, right? So our goal in third grade is to write long, to elaborate. But now, when we're gearing towards that test in May, we have to switch it up. So now they learned the skill. So now ChatGPT said with a prompt, okay, now they know the skill. Let's hone it in and pick out specific details just to plan short of their plan, so it frees them up to write long. So we almost worked backwards, which was kind of cool to see in third grade, because usually you build upon skills. This was like you were giving them the entire skill for a few months, and now we're trying to
So
perfect the skill.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure.
So you gave them a whole piece then, a written piece, and had them pluck out the pertinent information and drop keywords onto the graphic organizer. Is that how?
That's exactly what we did. And that's
Okay.
a hard skill for third grade, to know what is important to take out and what to recognize as the restating the topic, and what evidence to pull out from the text, and how to cite that evidence and elaborate on it, and not write it in full sentences, but just bullet forms and just simple little words. So it, as they're typing and elaborating now, they're looking at that short plan, that quick plan, so they have time to elaborate. But again, I feel like if we didn't do the longer piece first, would they know how to elaborate
Right.
fully?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the techniques that I saw that you used, I can't remember if it was from writing onto the graphic organizer or working from the text and pulling and then populating the graphic organizer, but it was the snowball technique. Was that something you got from AI, or is that something you created on your own?
Well, when I put it into ChatGPT, I made my last video on partnerships. I love when the students are able to work in partnerships. It's just such a nice collaborative approach. So yes, from ChatGPT also, kind of gave me a snowball idea. And again, ChatGPT will give you different ideas, and as the teacher, you figure out which is best for your class to differentiate, and kind of like targeted towards your specific learners and their needs. But yes, and then we snowballed and we tried to pull out this evidence with a partnership, and then we snowballed with that partnership, went with another partnership, and they shared their thinking, so they all snowballed together to share their thinking. And what a wonderful collaborative approach it was. And mind you, the groups were made from ChatGPT, like we showed you in the first video, just because those, so they support each other a little bit more in the partnerships. And the students were really able to take that skill and support each other, and having different skills and different strengths and weaknesses. I find when I run it through Magic Schools, their writing pieces and their data, I really get great partnerships, and that's what we also worked on in the lesson as
Yeah.
well.
I'll say the partnerships have just been amazing. Like, really, we rarely see such functional partnerships, right? Where there's no arguing, the kids are working together, everyone's engaged. That has, I would highly recommend that to anyone who's running their data, their student work samples through ChatGPT or any other large language model. It's just great for that. But the snowball technique, let me just make sure I'm understanding this
Yep.
correctly. So basically, the idea was one student was going to state the claim, right? And
Correct.
then they gave their evidence from the story and they're thinking about it. And
Yes.
then they passed it to the next partnership. And the next partnership then had to read the claim and the evidence, and then they took over for that from there and cited the next piece of evidence. So
Abs- Go
one
ahead.
thing I noticed, no, that's okay. I just getting all excited about it. One thing I noticed when I was watching is that some of the kids were like, "But that was the evidence I was going to put," And so it was a great technique to force them to not go for the low-hanging fruit, right? They had to go for something maybe, all right, well, somebody already took my idea. So if I'm the third person to get the text to have to add my evidence, I had to think a little more deeply.
Right.
So it was a
And I
great
saw
technique.
I saw a lot of critical thinking going on, like, like you said, oh wait, what do I have to do now? Like, we have to problem solve this. Like, and in third grade, that's a skill we really talk about a lot, is solving a problem,
Yep.
you know? And another fun thing I learned is that you want to have nice handwriting to pass along the snowball paper, because if you don't, the people next time can't read it. So they're all like, oh, wait, let me do my best handwriting. So it
Yeah.
holds them accountable for their work as well, which was a great
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what else we didn't mention? That you had tried, because we were introducing the kids, we said, all right, now you're ready for the next step. You're not going to write so much on the organizer, just a few words or phrases to prompt yourself. So, talk a little bit about the podcast that you created, and maybe we can unpack that.
Of course. So we also created a podcast for the students to listen to before they kind of got into their groups of work, in their partnerships of working. And I use Notebook LM, which I know that you did an entire video on. So go visit that and see that, how cool it is.
It is so
um,
cool.
and we use Notebook LM, and I put my actual slideshow that I was showing the students with a little bit of background of Jabari Jumps, the book, and their goals for the day, and what I wanted them to work on, the plan short, write long, method. And I put it into Notebooks LM, and it really gave me a fun 4-minute podcast, and just for the students to kind of listen to that. And what I found out, and what we were chatting about, is that they're not used to listening as much as watching a screen in
Yeah.
third grade, this generation, right? So everything is kind of like visual, and the podcast was not. And to listen to that, it was kind of eye-opening to see, like, they were like, well, where's the picture? I'm like, there's no picture.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we'll think about next time if we do a podcast again with them, which I do think it's a good tool to do something to keep them engaged as listeners, to hold them accountable for what they're listening to. But I do think it was a nice change of pace. They listen to us talk all day, right? They listen to the teacher talk all day. So to listen to the podcast was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
know what? They like to hear, like, the different voices, and
Mhm.
just kind of like, and I just wish that, like, the podcast could be something that, and maybe somebody out there knows a different program to use, but just to kind of be more geared towards, kid friendly, a celebratory kid friendly podcast, because I know Notebooks LM, but it's very adult friendly, I
Mhm.
find, for third graders. And the voices are kind of and that you can't change, like, you can't say to Notebook LM too much, unless I don't know how to do it, so maybe somebody can tell me. Make this kind of like a kid friendly version of the podcast, because it kind of, from what my understanding was, it just kind of like gives you one version of it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we could try customizing it a bit more. We'll have to play around with
Yeah,
it, but
definitely.
I definitely agree with that. And so then after the lesson, we were really excited because, we continued with a couple of days of the students writing, and then we took a look at a piece of writing, and we were sure that we were going to run it through Magic Schools, and it was going to give us back a 3 because we've
Right.
seen such growth in their
Yes.
writing. So we learned something about AI, that AI can be confidently wrong at times, right? So
Yes.
we ran the right through, and it came back as a 2, and we were like, How is it possible that this piece is still a 2? This is just, like, what else can we possibly do?" And then I think you pointed out that it was continually referencing their paragraph
Right.
structure. And
Right.
so why don't you talk into that a little bit?
Right. So as you know, I'm like, okay, they're gonna get a 3. I know it, and then it was a 2. I was like, oh no, what do they still need support in? Because then I gotta put that through, next. I gotta put that through ChatGPT, which I did, and I'll get to that in
Yeah,
a minute.
that's
Um, but yeah, so they were saying, Magic Schools was saying, um, it was coming back at 2 because of, other things, but one of the things they mentioned was paragraph structure. And I was like, well, paragraph structure is, we started in third grade, but really is a standard in fourth grade, understanding how to make clear, concise paragraphs. We do touch on it, but it's not something that we really refine in third grade. So that was interesting.
and
So
and it's not on the NJSLA rubric
it's not.
as criteria.
No,
Okay.
no. So I'm wondering, like, would they get a 3 if we took the paragraph structure out? Maybe. That's
So
TBD.
yeah, so we asked Magic Schools, are you sure that paragraphs are referred to on the rubric that we provided that you are comparing, this writing against? And it apologized to us and said, "Oh, you're absolutely correct. I
Yeah.
stand corrected."
I was
And
like,
then,
"Ooh." It's like,
yeah,
"Are you
yeah,
smarter than a 5th grader?" We've had a moment that we were smarter than AI. I don't know
yeah.
how that happened, but
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I do think that, again, that points to the fact that you cannot just outsource thinking to AI. You always have to be critically looking at the output, making sure it makes sense. While we would certainly 100% agree, we've gotten really valuable and helpful feedback. There are times when it does make mistakes, so you always have to keep an eye on that.
for sure. And I'm going to talk about next what we did with
Yeah.
that next data, but for sure, because I feel like even when it gives me an output, I always have to put my teacher input into it, that for my students, so this year might be different input than I put in for next year, just to kind of target that specific learning, and you want to differentiate it based on your kids. But can I share with you what I did after
Yeah,
that?
please. I'm excited.
So once we got the 2, we sat down together again and we said, all right, well, what now can we do? Right. So it's all about tracking their progress, tracking their data, and using really specific learning in order for them to grow.
Mhm.
And we said, okay, what can we do now that we still are getting a 2? So we ran it through again, Magic Schools, and kind of came, saw where they were needed support in. And again, it was the explanation of the quote that we use for the prompt. So when a student gets a prompt, they cite the evidence from the text, whether it's a book or a passage or a picture that they're using. And then they have to explain that. And we have found out, and again, it's third grade, but we found out that their explanation was always not on target referencing that quote.
Mhm.
So I'm going to share my screen,
Okay.
and I'm just going to show you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we ran it through Magic Schools, the writing that they did yesterday. And again, I got general feedback, and I got, right on mechanics and elaboration. I said, okay, so now my goal as a teacher today was to come back in and again, target the learning, to finding that piece of elaboration where they could really support that evidence for what they cited in their quote.
Hmm.
We use what we call an iced tea method in our school. I know everybody uses different planners, but they're basically the same graphic organizers. It's just, set up a little bit differently. So, we came up with this, I ran it through ChatGPT, and I said, again, using that prompting mechanism of, I'm a third grade teacher. My students still need support in proving their evidence for their citation. Give me a strategy that I can use. And it did. And I kind of switched it a little bit, to be honest with you. So looking at my class, some of this is Chat GPT, and some of it I kind of switched because of we're doing the iced tea method. So I kind of geared it toward that learning. But it was really kind of cool. And it was, make it your own. What does it mean and why does it matter? So because we use the iced tea, we call it the method, right? So it's getting sweeter and sweeter by the day, this iced tea method. And the kids were hysterical laughing today. They're like, ooh, it's like yummy, right? Like, So basically, in the citing part, we cite our quote in the graphic organizer. But in the elaboration part, they were writing sentences that were not specifically proving the citation or the quote. So I came up with the help of ChatGPT, 3 sentences that they are going to write in that elaboration part. What does your quote literally say, which is the make it your own, restate it in your own words? What does it mean? What does that quote actually mean? And why? This is, I think, where it is, where they were having a lot of trouble. Why does it matter?
Hmm.
Why is this quote important? How does it connect to the theme and character of the story? So I showed them, and I'm just going to go down here because we were reading The One and Only Bob. I showed them an example. The quote was, "The trick is the heart doesn't forget," and that was from The One and Only Bob. And it showed me how to make it your own by restating it. What does it mean? And why does it matter? And I love that this quote connects to the theme of love, loyalty, and memory. I think that's where they were kind of missing it. So I tried it today in class. And I was like, okay, everyone, we're going to do, instead of one good sentence about this means or this shows or this proves, we're going to do make it yummier and do 3 sentences. And do you know, they actually said to me, "Mrs. D'Angelo, that makes it a lot easier and clearer for us to write."
Oh,
So
wow.
we tried it today,
Okay.
and I gave them this chart, and I gave them a quote on the board from The One and Only Bob, which we're reading in class now, and they had to support the theme of trust, and they filled it in. They filled it in these boxes, and it was much more targeted to the actual quote that I gave them.
Yeah. So, as we started doing this, like our original goal was to that's amazing, by the way. I just have to say, I'm so excited about this because I really think this is the scaffolding that they needed. This was the missing piece. We were reading their pieces, and now they were stating the theme. They were providing text evidence. They had transition words. Their sentence structure, it's not great, but it's improving. Even their mechanics were improving. We're seeing the progress. But the missing piece was the piece that is so hard for them, which is, why are these quotes important? The thinking behind it, right? And uh, I think a lot of proponents of writing workshop and writing process would say, well, that's the problem with formulaic writing, that it doesn't have, any real feeling or thought behind it. And so then it sounds very formulaic. But what we're discovering is that the kids really need to be taught the formula, and they need this thinking scaffolded. And so, you know, otherwise it's just too big for them. Like the idea of discussing a theme and comparing a theme across 2 different pieces of literature, or even within one piece of literature, that is huge work.
Yeah.
And I know the state of New Jersey believes that this is something that your average 9-year-old should be able to do. But I can tell you that I know people much older than 9 who would struggle with this same kind of task. It requires depth of thought. It requires an ability to put your thought into words in a persuasive way. I mean, it's there's a lot going on. So I just love the fact that you zeroed in on that missing piece, the hard work of like all the thought behind it, and broke it down so they could see it. I'm really not surprised to see that the kids were like really liking that, because it was probably starting to feel to them a little bit formulaic. Like, I do this, I find a quote in the book, I put it in, but they were missing that I guess writer's voice in it. And now you're fleshing that out for them. So I think that's awesome.
Right. And you know what? It just goes back to the point of tracking the data, looking at, getting suggestions that I have as a classroom teacher, but also my AI assistant, that some things that they have, and then meshing them two together, like, AI obviously is not perfect. I'm human, so it's like taking the two of them and kind of saying, okay, this is what my kids need, and understanding what my kids need, but then getting different ideas of a non-biased point of view that, they say, okay, well, these are strategies that work. Meshing the two together, the kids really were successful with it today. And
Yeah.
you're exactly right. When we start teaching it, it is formulaic, right? It is, I know this because this proves that. And coming from second grade, they don't do a lot of that in second grade. So we have to make it very strategic for them. But now moving to fourth, where they can find their voice as a writer, this kind of also for me, like ChatGPT got it right this time.
Yeah.
This for me let them, also talk about what they feel like. This connects to the theme because it's not just so formulaic of one sentence. Taking that short plan, writing it long, and giving them these 3 extra pieces of the puzzle,
Hmm.
I think will now bring them forward. And it's amazing to see how we started. Like, we started long, then we went to short, and now we're building and refining those skills based on my observation as well as my expert AI assistant.
Right, absolutely. And it's amazing because we started with, the students having no structure to the point where we're like, okay, everyone is using this graphic organizer and we're doing it this way,
Right.
right? To where they had no structure at all, to almost where it became overly structured. And now we're kind of swinging the pendulum back a little bit again to put more of their voice into it and show their deep thinking about the theme. So
Right.
awesome work. Seriously. I mean, I'm so excited by all of this and just I think it's amazing.
And it's fun. To me it's fun. Like, I really like, looking at this data,
Hmm.
seeing where else you could target these specific instructions to watch your students grow.
Yes.
And you know what? If this didn't work, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You go back and you know what your students can do. You kind of, to me, I would go back to ChatGPT and say, okay, this did not work.
Hmm.
Because of this reason. I'm a third grade teacher who is, needing my students to excel in this area. Give me 3 other lessons that I can possibly do with them. So it's like, it's ongoing. The more knowledge you have and the more data that you can put in, and the more data the more support that you can give the kids.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's what we're here for, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Well, we learned a lot this week and it was fun teaching the kids what we learned, right? And hopefully that'll lead us into the next lesson. What do you think we have in store for us next?
That's a mystery. You're gonna have to tune in next Friday.
Sounds good.
Leave you on a
Have-
cliffhanger.
yes. Thanks for taking time on a Friday afternoon to debrief the week with me. I appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.